In this tutorial, I will show you how to make this granny square with the granny style crochet heart in the center. Okay, let's go ahead and get started, and I will show you how to make this granny square. Okay, so to begin, we're going to start off with a slip knot. And then I'm going to chain 5 chains. And then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that first chain to form a little ring. And we're going to start off just like you would with any regular granny square. So we're going to start off with a chain 3. And this chain 3 will count as a double crochet. And then into that center ring, I'm going to work 2 more double crochets. The first chain 3 will count as a double crochet, and then I worked 2 more double crochets. So now I have a group of 3 double crochets. So now I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to work another group of 3 double crochets. So I'm working 3 double crochets into that center ring. So I just worked 3 double crochets into that little circle, and then I'm going to chain 2. And then I'm going to work another group of 3 double crochets. And then I'm going to chain 2. And then I'm going to work one more group of 3 double crochets into that center circle. Okay, and then I'm going to chain 2. And now you can see I have 4 groups of 3 double crochets. So I just did a chain 2. And then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that third chain, that top of the 3 chains that I did when I began the round. And that completes round 1. When you're done with round 1, you should have 4 groups of 3 double crochets and 4 chain 2 spaces. And remember, the chain 3, we're counting that as a double crochet. Okay, so let's begin round 2. I'm going to chain 1, and into that same joining stitch where I just did a slip stitch, I'm going to do a single crochet. And then into the next stitch, which is the middle double crochet of this group of 3, I'm going to work 3 stitches. I'm going to work a double crochet, a treble or triple crochet, and another double crochet. So 3 stitches, a double crochet, a treble, and a double crochet all into this next stitch. So this stitch has 3 stitches. So I'm going to do my double crochet and then my treble crochet. For the treble crochet, sometimes you'll hear it called a triple crochet or treble. So I'm going to yarn over 2 times and then insert my hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, and then you'll have 4 loops on your hook. You'll yarn over and pull through 2 loops, leaving these 2 loops still on the hook. And then you'll have 3 loops on the hook. So then you're going to yarn over again, pull through 2 loops, leaving this last one still on the hook. And then you'll see you have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through these last 2 loops to complete your treble crochet. And then into that same stitch, we're going to work a double crochet. So this stitch had 3 stitches, a double crochet, treble, and double. This next stitch, which is the third stitch of this group of 3, I'm going to work a single crochet. So you can see this here, where we worked the 3 stitches, that's the point of our heart at the bottom. And then I'm here where that chain 2 space is. I'm going to work 2 single crochets into that chain 2 space. And then here's the next group of 3. The first one, I'm going to work a single crochet. The next stitch, which is the middle one, I'm going to work a half double crochet. And then the next stitch, which is the third one of this group of 3, I'm going to work a double crochet. And then you're going to be here to the next chain 2 space. Into this chain 2 space, I'm going to work 8 double crochets all into this same chain 2 space. And you might need to move the stitches over so you can fit all 8 double crochets into the chain 2 space, and they will all fit. So now you should have 8 double crochets into the chain 2 space, and so then you have the next group of 3 double crochets from the previous round. So I'm going to skip the first, so I'm going to skip the next stitch, and then into this next stitch, which is the middle double crochets of this group of 3 from the previous round, I'm going to do a slip stitch. And then I'll skip the very next stitch here. I'm going to skip that one. So before we do the slip stitch, we skip a stitch, then slip stitch, and then skip a stitch again. And then here's the next chain 2 space. I'm going to work 8 double crochets into that chain 2 space just like I did right here. So I'm going to work my 8 double crochets into this chain 2 space. Okay, so now I have my 8 double crochets into the chain 2 space, and it's a good idea to count your stitches to make sure. Okay, so I have the right amount of stitches. I have my 8 double crochets. So now here's that next group of 3 from the previous round. So the first one, I'm going to do a double crochet. So this first stitch, a double crochet. The next stitch, I'm going to work a half double crochet. So for a half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and that is how you do your half double crochet. The next stitch will have a single crochet. And then here's the last chain 2 space for this round. Into that chain 2 space, I'm going to work 2 single crochets. If you just want to have this heart and use it as an applique or something, then you would just do the slip stitch to that first single crochet and then fasten off. But since I'm turning this into a granny square, we're going to be adding the new color. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert our hook into that first single crochet, and then we will yarn over with the new color to finish the slip stitch, in other words. Okay, so now I have joined with the slip stitch, but I finished the slip stitch with the new color. Now we're ready to turn this little heart into a square. Okay, so we're going to be working into the back loops of the stitch. So to begin, I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. So that chain 3 is on top of that single crochet that we did when we first began round 2 for the heart. And then here's the next stitch that has the 3 stitches in it. So the next stitch is a double crochet. So that into the top of that double crochet, I'm going to work a half double crochet. So we're going to work in the back loops only. So I'm going to do my half double crochet, so yarn over, insert my hook into that back loop, pull up a loop. I have my 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Okay, so now here's that center of the point of the heart. That's the treble crochet. I'm going to insert my hook into the back loop and work a single crochet. This next stitch, which is the double crochet, that group of 3 at the point of the heart, I'm going to work a half double crochet. This next stitch, that's the single crochet after this group of 3 from the previous round. I'm going to do a double crochet into that back loop of the stitch. In the next 3 stitches, I'm going to work a double crochet into the back loops only. So 1 double crochet, next stitch 1 double crochet, and 1 double crochet. So after I did the half double crochet, I worked 1 double crochet into the next 4 stitches, and you can see that these double crochets, they're worked into the tops of single crochets from the previous round. This next stitch, I'm going to work a half double crochet. So if you look at it, this is a half double crochet from the previous round. So into the top of that half double crochet, I'm going to work a half double crochet into the back loop. And then the next stitches all the way up to the slip stitch, we're going to be working single crochets. So into each of these double crochets, we're going to work single crochets in the back loop only. So that means the next 9 stitches will have 1 single crochet each, working in the back loop only. Okay, so I just did 1 single crochet in the last 9 stitches. Just worked 1 single crochet into the top of the double crochets from the previous round. Then the next stitch here, that's the slip stitch that we did when we worked this second round for the heart. So we want to retain that heart shape, so we don't want to work into this top of the slip stitch. We want to drop down into the previous round. And see, this is the double crochet from that round where we worked the slip stitch. We're going to actually insert a hook into that same stitch and work the slip stitch in the same place where we worked the slip stitch in the previous row or round. So here's the slip stitch. Follow it down to where you did the slip stitch before, which is the top of the double crochet right here. Insert your hook into that top of that double crochet in the previous round, and then pull up a loop and then slip stitch. And that way you'll retain that heart shape by doing that. So now the next 9 stitches, we will work 1 single crochet in the back loops only. So 1 single crochet into the top of the double crochets from the previous round. So we'll work 9 of these single crochets. Okay, so I just worked 1 single crochet in the last 9 stitches after working the slip stitch. And then into the next stitch, I'm going to work a half double crochet working in the back loop only. So that's, if you look, that's the half double crochet from the previous round. We're working a half double crochet into the top of that stitch. I'm going to work a half double crochet into the next stitch, which is the half double crochet in the previous round. And then I'm going to work a double crochet in the next 3 stitches. working in the back loops only. So we're working 1 double crochet into the next 3 stitches. And then the next stitch here, that's the chain 3. And then we're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that we did when we began the round, which does count as a double crochet. So now we are going to chain 3. Into that same stitch where we just joined, which is the top of the chain 3, I'm going to work another double crochet. So this stitch essentially has 2 stitches because we're working that double crochet into the same stitch that we just joined, and this chain 3 does count as a double crochet. So there's the chain 3 that we did, and then a double crochet into that same joining stitch into the top of the chain 3 of the previous round. Now the next stitch, we're going to work 1 double crochet, and this time for this round 4, we're going to work underneath both loops, the front and back loops. We're not going to work just in the back loops. That was just for this third round. Okay, so now I'm going to work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then into the next stitch. That's the single crochet from the previous round, which is right on top of the treble crochet. And I'm just mentioning it to you. I'm just mentioning that to you because then it helps you determine if you're working in the right stitch. Okay, so here's the single crochet. So I'm working 2 double crochets into that stitch. And then I'm going to work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, which is the top of the half double crochet in the previous round. And then into the next stitch, I'm going to work 2 double crochets into the same stitch. So at this point, you should have 8 double crochets if you count the chain 3, since the chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 2 double crochets here, 1, then 2, then 1, then 2. So we should have 8 stitches at this point. So then here we're going to work a corner stitch. So into the next stitch we are going to work 4 stitches with a chain 2 in the middle. So we're going to work 2. So into this next stitch we're going to work 2 double crochets, and then chain 2 for our corner stitch, and then into that same stitch where I just did the 2 double crochets, and then chain 2, I'm going to work 2 more double crochets into that same stitch to create my corner. So all into the same stitch, I did 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and that creates my corner. Okay, now into the next stitch, I'm going to work 1 double crochet, and then the next 7 stitches, I'm going to work a half double crochet. And remember, for round 4, we're working underneath both the front and back loops of the stitch. We only worked in the back loops for the third round. Okay, so the next 7 stitches, 1 half double crochet each. This is the 4th one. It's 5, 6, 7. So the last 7 stitches, 1 half double crochet each. The next stitch we need to create another corner, so we're going to do the same thing we did here. Into this next stitch we're going to work 2 double crochets, then chain 2, and then work 2 more double crochets into the same stitch to create the corner. So into this stitch I'm going to do 2 double crochets, and then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to work 2 more double crochets into that same stitch, And that creates my second corner. Okay, and then into the next 3 stitches, I'm going to work 1 double crochet each. Okay, and then the next stitch, that's the slip stitch. So into the top of the slip stitch, you can see if you turn it, there's the front loop and the back loop. So the slip stitches do have a front and back loop just like the other stitches. So into that stitch, I'm going to work 2 double crochets into the same stitch. So 2 double crochets into the top of the slip stitch right in the center here. And then the next 3 stitches, I will work 1 double crochet each. And then into the next stitch, I need to create another corner. So I'm going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets, just like I did the other 2 corners. So 2 double crochets into the next stitch, chain 2, 2 more double crochets into that same stitch. And that creates my third corner. Okay, and then into the next 7 stitches, I'm going to work 1/2 double crochet. To the last 7 stitches, I did 1/2 double crochet each. And then this next stitch, I'm going to work 1 double crochet. Then we have 1 more stitch left, and that is going to be a corner stitch. So I'm going to work the corner just like I did this one. So for this next stitch, we need to do 2 double crochets into the stitch. And then chain 2. And then 2 more double crochets into that same stitch to make a corner. Okay, so there's my corner stitch. I worked 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets into the same stitch, and then join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that you did when you began the round. And that completes round 4. So we have our 4 corners. In each corner there's a chain 2 space. So in between the 2 chain 2 spaces on each side, there should be 12 stitches. So if you want to count, you have 1, 2, counting after the chain 2 space. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's the chain 2 space, next chain 2 space. So we should have 12 stitches in between. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. And then I'll check the side between the next 2 chain 2 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then counting the bottom part where the point of the heart is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, perfect. And you want to double check that before you move on to the next one because you want to make sure you have the right amount of stitches. Okay, so now I'm going to do a 5th round. So for round 5 with the white yarn here, the second color, I'm going to chain 3. And that chain 3 should be right in line with the chain 3 from the previous round. And then I'm just going to work 1 double crochet in each of these stitches until I get to the corner. And I'm working underneath both the front and back loop of the stitches. Okay, so now I have my chain 2 space in the corner here. So there's a corner, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. So you work your corner stitch just like the other one. So 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets into that same chain 2 space for my corner stitch, or corner group of stitches, I should say. Okay. And then we're going to work 1 double crochet into each of these stitches before the chain 2 space. So you want to make sure that you don't skip this next stitch here. After the chain 2 space, you might want to move your stitches over because you don't want to skip this next stitch. You do want to work into that one. You don't want to skip over it, in other words, and because if you have these stitches too close, it might overlap and you might forget to work into that one. So just move your stitches over to make sure we get that stitch as well, because we want to count that one. So we want to do 1 double crochet into each of these stitches until we get to the chain 2 space of the next corner. So all of these stitches are double crochets. In the previous round, we did have some half double crochets, and that's because we needed to square it off. But now that it's squared off, all of these stitches now for round 5 are double crochets. Okay, then we're going to work the next corner stitch into this chain 2 space. So the same way, 2 double crochets into the chain 2 space, chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets into that chain 2 space to complete your corner. So now, in between these 2 chains 2 spaces here, each corner, you should have 16 double crochets. 15, 16. Okay, so I have my 16 double crochets in between each chain 2 of the corner. And then you're going to work 1 double crochet into these next stitches here until you get to the chain 2 space. And then after working our corner, we want to make sure that we move the stitches over because we don't want to miss this stitch right here. That's right after the chain 2 when we work our side stitches for the side here. So we want to make sure that we move this over so that we don't miss this stitch because we want to include this one. And we're going to work 1 double crochet in each one of these double crochets from the previous round until we get to the next chain 2 space. So for our side here, we're going to work 1 double crochet into the next 12 stitches, and then we'll be here where that chain 2 space is. So moving my stitches over to make sure I don't miss that one, working my double crochet, and then I'm going to work 1 double crochet in the rest of the stitches on this side until I get to the next corner just before the chain 2 space. Okay, so I just worked 1 double crochet, and then I'm here where that next corner is, where the chain 2 space is. So I worked 1 double crochet in between the chain 2 spaces. Okay, and then now I'm going to work my next corner just like I did the other corners. I'm going to work 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets all into the corner stitch into this chain 2 space. So into this chain 2 space, I'm going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets into that same chain 2 space to work my corner. Okay, so I just finished my corner stitch. So I should have 16 double crochets in between the chain 2 spaces of each corner. So you should have 16 double crochets, just like we did on this side. Each side should have the same amount of double crochets in between the chain 2 spaces. So now I'm ready to work the next side. So the same thing, I need to move my stitches over to make sure I don't miss that one right there. I'm going to work my double crochet, and I'm going to do 1 double crochet in each of the stitches until I get to my next corner. So I'll stop right here when I get to the chain 2 space, so working just 1 double crochet in each stitch for this side. Now we're here to the next corner. So for the corner, I'm going to work 2 double crochets into the chain 2 space, chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets into that same chain 2 space for the corner. Okay, that completes the corner stitch. So in between the chain 2 spaces for this side, I should have 16 double crochets in between the 2 chain 2 spaces. That's my third side. So now I just need to finish up the fourth side, which was the side that we first started for the bottom. Now I need to move over the stitches in the corner to make sure I don't miss that stitch there to the corner. And then I'm going to work my double crochet into that stitch right after the corner. And then I have 1 more double crochet just before that chain 3 I did when I began this round. So the next stitch, 1 double crochet, and then I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 that I did when I began the round to complete that side at the bottom of the granny square. So that's the side where the tip of the heart is for the bottom. So that completes this round. Now, in between the 2 chain 2 spaces, I should have 16 double crochets just like the other sides. So it's always a good idea to double check by counting your stitches. So after the chain 2 space, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I'm counting that chain 3 as a double crochet. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So now all 4 sides have 16 double crochets in between the chain 2 spaces. So now I'm just going to work 1 more round. I'm going to change back to the color pink to give it a nice edge, working all the way around. And this round is going to be the same as the last one. So it's going to be exactly the same, a repeat of this round that we just finished. It's going to be a repeat of this round that we finished, which is round number 5. So round 6 is going to be exactly the same as round 5, but I'm going to work with the same color that I began with, the color pink, just to give it a nice edge to finish off my granny square. You can fasten off here and start in the corner if you want to. You know, when you work a granny square, sometimes some people like to start with the corner, but I'm going to just go ahead and undo that slip stitch that I did to join, since I'm going to change to a new color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my hook into the top of that chain 3. I'm not going to complete the stitch with this yarn since I'm changing to a new color. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to yarn over with the pink yarn since I'm changing colors, and I'm going to do my slip stitch with the pink yarn to finish the stitch. So that completes this round 5 now. So I just wanted to show you again how to, join if you want to go back to the original color that you started with. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did when I began round 5, chain 3. this chain 3 is going to count as the first double crochet. Then I'm going to work 1 double crochet into each stitch until I get to the chain 2 space. In this round, I'm going to go a little bit faster since it is a repeat of round 5, and it's done just like any granny square. Okay, so now I did 1 double crochet until I get to the chain 2 space. So at this point, you should have 12 double crochets since you are counting the chain 3 as a double crochet. So that's the first double crochet, and if you count, you should have 12 double crochets just before you get to the chain 2 space. And then you work your corner just like I did with the other corners. 2 double crochets into the chain 2 space, chain 2, 2 more double crochets into that same chain 2 space for my corner stitch. Then I'm going to move the stitches over because I want to make sure I don't forget that stitch. We want to include that one. And then I'm going to work 1 double crochet into the stitches until I get to the chain 2 space. Okay, so I'm here to the chain 2 space, and I just wanted to mention when I worked down here, I mentioned that there was 12 double crochets before I worked the corner. After you work the corner, along this bottom, you should have 14 double crochets before the chain 2 space. So if you count the chain 3 as a stitch, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And I just wanted to mention that because I mentioned that you should have 12 double crochets before you work the corner stitch. But then after working the 2 double crochets and then the chain 2, there's 14 stitches along the bottom here. So now we're going to work our next corner stitch for this side. For the corner, we're going to work it the same as the other corners. 2 double crochets into that corner stitch, which is the chain 2 space. Chain 2. And 2 more double crochets into that same chain 2 space, and that completes the corner. And then after you work this side, and in between the chain 2 spaces, you should have 20 double crochets in between the 2 chain 2 spaces here. So here we have 20 double crochets in between the chain 2 spaces, and along the bottom right now we have 14 because we're going to finish when we come back around, we do the corner here, and then we finish up the rest of the side. So we will have the 20 stitches at that point in between the 2 corners, in between the chain 2 spaces. So right now, you should have 14 double crochets before you get to the chain 2 space for the bottom part. And then you should have 20 double crochets in between these 2 chain 2 spaces. So now I've just finished working my corner. So now along the top side here, going to work my stitches until I get to the chain 2 space for my corner. So I'm going to move the stitches over because we want to make sure we don't skip that stitch there after the corner. And I'm going to work 1 double crochet until I get to the next corner to that chain 2 space. Okay, so now I'm here to the corner, and there's my chain 2 space for the corner stitch into the chain 2 space, 2 double crochets into that chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets into that chain 2 space to work the corner. So along the top of our heart now, we should have 20 double crochets in between the 2 chain 2 spaces. Each side should have 20 double crochets in between the chain 2 spaces when we finish it, because like I said, in the bottom right now we only have 14, but when we work this corner and come back around, we're going to finish up the rest of the stitches here, and then we'll have our 20 stitches. Okay, so now we have our 20 double crochets along this side, the 20 double crochets along that side, and like I said, we're going to finish up that bottom edge when we come back around. So now we're going to work this next side. So we're going to work 1 double crochet in each of the stitches till we get to the corner. So I'm moving my stitches over again because I don't want to miss that stitch. And I'm going to work 1 double crochet in each stitch for the side. So just like a typical granny square. And this is a solid granny square, except for the heart has, some holes in it. But I did that on purpose because I like the design of it, and I just wanted to do a granny style heart in the center of my solid granny square. Okay, so now I'm here to the corner just before the bottom side here. I am here at the chain 2 space, so now I'm going to work my corner stitch, and the corner stitch is the same as the others. 2 double crochets into the chain 2 space, then chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets into that same chain 2 space to complete my corner. Okay, so that completes the corner. Now I just have to finish the side for the bottom. So you can see we have 4 more stitches to work before we get to that chain 3. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to be joining with a slip stitch to that chain 3. So to complete the bottom side, we're going to go ahead and work 1 double crochet into the next 4 stitches, and we want to make sure you move the stitches over after you work the corner to make sure you don't miss that first one. So 1 double crochet into the next 4 stitches. Okay, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 that we did when we began the round. Okay, and that completes the bottom edge and the bottom side. So now we should have 20 double crochets in between the 2 chain 2 spaces for this bottom edge as well, just like the other sides, since we finished it up now, because we joined in the center, so that's why it seemed like it wasn't the correct amount of stitches, but now it will be. And if you count your stitches in between the chain 2 spaces, you'll have 20 double crochets, just like the other sides. So now I'm going to count my stitches. 7. That chain 3 does count as a stitch. That counts as a double crochet, so that's the 7th one. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I have my 20 double crochets in between the 2 chain 2 spaces of the corners, just like the other sides. So now I have completed my granny square, so now I just need to fasten off and weave in the tails. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and yarn over with that tail give it a tug to fasten off, and then I'm just going to weave in all the tails. And that completes the granny square. And now all you need to do is block the granny square if you want, and you are done. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial today on learning how to make this cute granny square with the granny style crochet heart in the center. I want to thank you for watching and have a great day.